Hello. Today's topic is nuclear power and why it's just better than everything else right now. To start off, let's discuss how nuclear power works. Modern nuclear reactors work on fission, which nuclear fission is the breaking apart of atoms to release heat. Now, how they do that is they have uranium pellets that they put in steel rods that get put down into water. The heat from the reaction causes the water to boil and then create steam. The steam then rises up through the cooling towers, spins a turbine, and then it is, recycled. And it's a very simple process because realistically, nuclear power sounds very complex in nature, but it's just steam power, like everything else is besides for wind and solar. So, some problems that people always have with nuclear and always questions they ask are things like, where does the nuclear waste go? How dangerous is it? Well, nuclear waste is very simply disposed of. They put it in these big capsules. These containers, you'll see one behind me, are covered in concrete lead, and even steel in there, just to make it impenetrable for the radiation to get out. You could practically drop a bomb on one of these things and it wouldn't budge. So the waste is not a problem. And the water that is released by these plants is extremely low levels of radiation. The background radiation is insanely higher than how much is in the water that they're dumping. As a matter of fact, frequent flyers and airline crew are exposed to more radiation per year than someone who works in a nuclear power plant, just to get across how safe they are. Now, our next topic to talk about is past disasters, like Chernobyl and Fukushima. They may create a lot of scariness sounds towards nuclear power, but when you look into them, they were extreme accidents, only shown by what the worst of the worst can go wrong, what will happen. Realistically, all we need to do is learn from these and we won't have to worry about those problems ever. Chernobyl caused 34 direct deaths, which, compared to deaths caused by accidents at coal and gas plants, is negligible. The biggest problem that happened at Chernobyl was basically everything went wrong. It started out with a routine test that everything they could have done wrong, they did wrong. They threw out it. Just, if it got too hot, they wouldn't shut it down. They let it get completely out of control to the point where it was unstoppable. We can fix these problems in the future by just having better training and better overall systems in place, automatic systems to stop this from happening even. And Fukushima was caused by an extremely massive earthquake in the beginning. That just caused a few systems to go down, and it was pretty alright at first, until the tsunami came. After that point, their biggest problem at Fukushima was that their flood walls weren't big enough. So realistically, just redundancy is a big thing that could have stopped that. Make the walls way bigger than they would ever need to be, and you wouldn't have to worry about a problem like that. Which shows that is, again, something that could have been avoided and could be avoided again in the future. Just by changing nuclear power plants and making them a little bit better than they are now, we can make them almost fail-proof. I mean, even Fukushima only caused one direct death, and the evacuation of the area caused tons of more deaths than just the explosion itself. It's estimated that the amount of people that would have died from, say, cancer long down the road would have been negligible to the thousands of people who died in the evacuation process, because it was very poorly done. Both of these accidents, I'm not ready to go fully into detail about them, because those in and of themselves can be half-hour-long videos of just an explanation of all the little things that happened to lead up to these disasters. There's plenty of sources out there where you can find out more about these disasters, and I'm going to put a couple in the description below. And so, the future of nuclear power. In the future of nuclear power, there's already a lot of advancements. Right now, we have thorium, which is an extremely safe radioactive material. It has a much lower chance to go supercritical than uranium, and it produces a lot more power, and it produces a lot less waste. And even then, in America alone, we've only produced, in the past 60 years, enough radioactive material to fill up about a football field size hole that's about, I believe it is 6 yards deep. Realistically, over 60 years, that's nothing. Compare that to coal, gas, and compare that to all the fiberglass that they're using to construct windmills, and you'll see it's negligible. It's nothing for how much power that it's produced, because radioactive power is extremely power efficient. In Texas alone, the two nuclear reactors that are in Texas produce about 10% of all the power in Texas, and that's 2 nuclear reactors. If they built onto them, updated them, who knows how much power they could make? Well, somebody does, but I don't. I mean, the future of nuclear power is basically, it is the future of all of our power. Nuclear fusion is on the rise, and recently they've been doing experiments where it has been able to produce more power than they're putting into it for short periods of time before they have to shut it off. Before, nuclear fusion sounded like sci-fi, because the concept of it is it's putting atoms together to create power, and it works in a very complicated way. That I'll leave something down below so you can read about that. And there's plenty of people who are very excited for the future of nuclear power. And I'm going to play a few clips from when I asked them how they felt about nuclear power.
Yeah! Yeah!
Yeah! All right!
Hooray!
Huzzah!
They're pretty excited. We talked about the past, we talked about the future, now let's talk about the present. A few months ago, there was a leak at a power plant. About 400,000 gallons of water leaked into the area around it. Now, it sounds really scary at first when you're reading all the headlines that say things such as nuclear water leaked from power plant, but realistically, it's completely safe. If you were to have a glass of water from a community right nearby there that was affected the most that it possibly could be, that water would be about 50 times less than the amount of radiation in your body naturally. Your body is 50 times more radioactive than a glass of that water that's straight from a power plant. That kind of puts things into perspective of how much background radiation we really experience every day. It shows that all of these things were just a little bit, if you get an X-ray, that increases that insanely more, because an X-ray exposes you to tons of radiation. So drinking that glass of water is way better for you than going to the dentist and getting your cavities looked at. So in the end, why aren't we using nuclear power yet? As much as we can. We need to use it a lot more. It only makes sense. It is the largest source of carbon neutral energy in the country right now. because of how much power it produces. Everywhere they're trying to put up more windmills and solar panels, but all of these take up all this space. They kill the environment around them, when surprisingly, nuclear power is safer than both of them. And they're, completely fine to live around. People who live around nuclear power plants love them. There was one right near where I used to live, and it shut down recently. And after that, electric prices skyrocketed because we were relying on things like solar and wind. And the price of that is just more in general. They should build it more, especially in places like Texas. Looking at things like the recent blackouts in the winter a couple years ago, that was all because most of the power is windmills now. And nuclear reactors, they don't stop for cold or warm. And in California, where now they're having rolling blackouts because everybody's charging their electric cars, they're getting rid of gas stoves, so everybody's going to have an electric stove. They're limiting people in the summer on their air conditioning usage because of how much power they need to power all these things that they're using in California. So why not build a couple more nuclear power plants, and that would basically solve all of their problems? Well, that's for you to decide why they're not doing that, because then that's getting a little bit political to talk about stuff like that. So, thank you, and have a nice day.